Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is April 12th, 2022. That's our theme song. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with Roger Friedland. Freeland. Where are you calling in from, Roger?
I'm calling in from Santa Barbara, California.
Well, how cool. I'm in Venice, California. And the first question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
To be alive.
There you go. You can't go back. That's a pretty good answer. That's Louis Buñuel said, "Long live the living."
That's right. That's the ultimate criterion. And you can't be a human being without loving and being loved. Otherwise, you're not a full human being.
Well, that's the answer that I really resonate with. That's the first proto hippie. Well, the first hippie ever, Eden Abes, wrote a song called Nature Boy, and he says the greatest thing you can learn in life is to love and be loved in return.
Indeed, I agree with it.
So you said that in so many words. So great. So what's your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
Favorite. Well, I love conversation,
Yeah.
and I often don't know what I think until I'm communicating with somebody and say it. And it doesn't, and it often, I don't even know that I know it until I say it.
Oh yeah. Conversation's a great answer. Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Well, there are many, many reasons. Um, One is to have sufficient information to know how to survive. Second is curiosity, that we want to know about the world. And if we are open enough, I mean, no, it's not. I mean, I think the most important thing is to try to be amazed, to
Yeah.
to maintain amazement over the course of our lives, and that generates curiosity, and that curiosity leads you to want information, to know how things work and why anything is possible. The fact that anything like life is possible is amazing.
Great words. We're going to touch on a lot of those words you just brought up. Roger, do you think this need or want to collect information is more innate or more invented?
I think it's innate.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, I mean, you know, the first thing that an infant wants to know is, where are the nipples, and where are those eyes that are associated with the nipples? It's these two, these two openings that are the most, that's the first information that's critical.
I like that. The face and the nipples. So I'm going to just go off script and just ask you because I've been exploring this thing. It's a hot topic now, the female gaze, the male gaze. And we've discussed in the past the how humans in or is eye contact more innate or more invented? So you've sort of touched on it. You're saying, the one of these initial moves is us looking for eye contact and the nipple. So is the human eye contact, the act of eye contact, more innate or more invented?
I think it's innate, and I think the fear of contact, or the inability to have eye contact, is something that has been conditioned by either withholding or fear, um, being embarrassed or shamed. And so, yeah. And
It's
uh, I think that, I mean, you asked about the male and female gaze. I mean, the female, I mean, it's a tragic world that we live in, where women and historically powerless people have to, not only they feel like they have to avert their eyes because they're afraid of what their eyes may engender, but that they are not looked at as people who have eyes. You know, they they're looked at like they, not only are they invisible, but they can't see.
yeah. It's pretty heavy how it's coming out more and more now, this whole the differences of men and males and females and the sameness of all humans. So we'll get into that more. Is thinking more innate or more invented?
Well, I think it's innate, because I think that, uh, we're designed to think. I mean, I think Aristotle was right that ends are causes.
Yeah. So you already answered this, but I'm going to ask it again just so you can fill it in. I don't know what I think until I fill in the blank.
Until I say it in conversation often.
Yeah, say it in conversation. You put it into context because that's McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. Joan Didion said, I don't know what I think until I write it. But you put it in conversation because you could say it out loud to yourself, but you need conversation. That's good. Roger, can humans think without language?
That's really a tough one. Can humans think without language? Well, I think that it depends what you mean by think,
Yeah,
okay? So if by think you mean recognize and cognize, yes. Okay, we don't need to have, let's start with categories. I mean, you don't need categories in order to recognize objects with, or entities with attributes. You know, you learn later it's a horse or a finger, or a bottle of milk. But so I think that you cognize, and then I think you think because you exist. I mean, I think thinking is an integral part of existing.
yeah,
And I think that, I mean, people who can't think can't survive. I mean, yeah, thinking thinking and living are integrally connected. And you asked about language. So, I mean, I mean, enormous amount of what we know, and this is independent of what we think, but what we know, uh, occurs below the levels of thought, and come to us without thinking.
yeah,
So the what we learn to do is we learn to know without thinking. And so the any master of any task can do much of it without thinking.
yeah,
So, but it doesn't mean that, I mean, thought went into, I mean, it depends. I mean, This is very complicated what you're asking now.
Right, right. But no, you did it good. And basically, all I'm asking for is your hunch, your guess. And
Okay.
that was beautiful because the Marx Brothers are in a jam, and one says, "Hey, we got to think," and the other one says, "Hey, we already tried that." And then Captain Beefheart said it so beautifully. He says, "I had too much to think." But you really resonated with George Lakoff. He says, "Hey, 80% of what's going on is we're not thinking. It's this other level." But just your observations of humans in general. Are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings? And again, I know it's like you can't separate thinking and feeling, but we invented the words. So just in general, your observation.
Well, I think one of the great intellectual missteps in the history of theory, in fact, is the way in which we've partitioned thought and feeling,
Yeah.
and how we have identified feeling with the feminine and thinking with the masculine, and so that men don't want to don't want to show that they're feeling, and women now don't want to either because there means that they will be, derogated as irrational and not to be listened to. So, I mean, I think, but that's on a gender problem. But because there's so much information and feeling that we miss a lot and don't recognize a lot. And so I think part of the failure of uh, our geopolitics is that uh, we don't imagine what other people are feeling enough.
It's good. That's the bumper sticker. What's your opinion? Don't believe everything you think.
Don't believe everything you think. I think that's good. I like
Yeah.
that.
So
That-
Chomsky, yeah, Chomsky says, back to can humans think without language? Language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. Roger, what do you do when language breaks down? When language doesn't work, what do you do?
Well, what's the situation?
Yeah. Again, you put all these questions into the context you want. So it's sort of like a general, what do you do when language breaks down? But I mean, you can put it in a just like, hey, you're talking to your students and you're not getting through to him. Maybe in that situation, some practical, or your family, or someone on the street, language isn't working. What do you usually do?
Um, well, I mean, this is one of my uh, serious defects is that I rely too much on language and on the manifest level of language. So, uh, when Deborah, my wife, and I go someplace, and I'll say, "God, wasn't he a nice guy?" And she'll say, What are you talking about?" Yeah. Yeah. And I just take I take the words. I'm so keyed into the words that I'm not picking up on the feelings that are coming from the situation or somebody, and I miss it. I miss what was happening. So, it's really good I'm married to Deborah because, uh, I miss a lot.
But that seems to me it's like you balance it out. You're a working normal sort of human being, and indeed you called it a defect, but I would just, not knowing you that well, I'd call it awareness level that you're picking up on that vibe and she's picking up on another vibration or another energy. But it sounds like you're more like me. Or I'd say Pollyanna-ish, or we're looking for the positive in life.
Well, that's our default option is that people are good and they mean what they say.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, I mean, you know, I'm a target for the shysters, you know. Pe- people with a lot of guile, you know, I'm sure I look like a great victim, you know. I look like that mouse, you know, to the red-tailed hawk uh, circling above, has no idea what's about to hit him.
Uh, okay, so these are two questions from Turing, 1950. Is thinking a function of the soul?
Turing, the
Alan Turing, yeah.
computer guy. Okay. Is thinking a what? Say it again.
Is thinking a function of the soul?
Function of the soul. Well, if we take the soul, as Aristotle did, to be the substance of our being, then yes.
Good. Can machines think?
Well, I mean, we're getting closer and closer. But there, I mean, I don't think that machines can think what the best good is. And I don't think that, I think that, yeah, I don't know. I don't, I mean, machines through artificial intelligence and algorithms can act as though they think,
Yeah,
but I don't think they're thinking.
yeah. But keep in mind, Roger, saying I don't know is totally valid. That's what I like. You get what we're after here is that I'm not trying to put you on the spot and trap you. Saying I don't know is totally valid. And so, that was good. So, do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Meaning.
There's no right or wrong answers to any of these questions, but that one you got right, dude. Well, I got it from, uh, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning.
Hmm.
And he says meaning lasts and happiness doesn't necessarily last. So, it again, it doesn't mean there is no right or wrong answer. It's very interesting how people go to either side. Now, does the brain more detect consciousness or create consciousness? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're detecting it, or are we actually creating it?
Well, among the few neuroscientists I've met in my life, um, one of the two of them told me that among his peers, to use the word consciousness is considered uh, really an indication of a weak mind.
Ah!
And, you know, there are only sort of neurological pathways and currents and synapses. And uh, so consciousness is something which is, you know, non-phenomenal. It can't be, it's not something that exists, but he believes in the existence of consciousness. And so one of the things that I really appreciated this, because one of the things I work on is the way in which uh, our lives are filled with non-phenomenal, the non-phenomenal as a condition of possibility of our doing all kinds of the things that we take to be most important, that we don't know what knowledge is, we don't know what love is. There's so many things we don't know. They're not phenomenal, but we act as if they are real. They are virtual goods.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
I have no idea.
Audre Lorde, the poet, said you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rainer responded and said, you can if you expose the tools. The basic question is what new tool do you suggest, or what new tool do you gravitate towards? Just to put it into context, you don't have to apply the quotes, these cute quotes I throw in front of questions. You don't have to apply them. You can. My basic question is what tool do you gravitate towards? And if you want to use the word new, what new tool, that's fine.
Well, given that, as I've already admitted, I'm a language guy, the tool that I gravitate towards is metaphor.
Whoa, that's great.
I love metaphor, going up, going down, seeing whether I can transpose it to another domain. And many of the most important theoretical advances in at least in the social sciences have been just metaphors, sort of transpositions and generalizations of metaphors that come from other domains. So, the Freudians used electricity all the time, charges and cathexis, and it was all libido. It was all one big current. So yeah, I mean, I think metaphor is incredibly powerful.
Totally agree. Even Marshall McLuhan reworded Browning's great line. Robert Browning, the poet, said, our reach should exceed our grasp, or what is heaven for? And then McLuhan said, our reach should exceed our grasp, or what is a metaphor?
That's like my one of my classmates when I was a graduate student say, what is a paradigm other than 20 cents?
Oh, that's great. George Clinton says, brother, can you paradigm? Beautiful. So, what new toy do you suggest? Or what new toy do you gravitate towards?
What new toy? Hmm. I don't know. I think that I would really like uh, uh, I would like one of those sort of a sky jet that would allow me to sort of hover around and swoop like birds. I always wanted to be a bird.
You mean like a drone for a human?
Yeah, I want to be. I'd like to be an intelligent drone.
That is cool, dude. I haven't had that answer. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Ah, what do I worry about? Hmm. Uh, I worry that I'm gonna have to get up at night too many times to pee and wake
Sorry to
up
laugh.
feeling
That
like shit,
that
that's
is the
what I
male thing at our age. This is what I heard. We've got to pee when we're peeing.
yeah, it's actually true. It's now, I've discovered that there's sort of this double flow, you take a pee, and
It's
then
a double
and you
flow.
think it's over, and then you just have to wait about 10 seconds, and then you really have to pee.
Sorry to laugh. It's another joke I love. The guy goes, Doctor, he says, Doctor, I'm having trouble peeing. He says, How old are you? He says, 85. He says, You peed enough.
Yeah.
Oh, this is fun. So McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound, the poet, that artists, and not to be elitist, everybody, but artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions so that we can learn to cope with what we don't like about them. So, whether it's spoken word or a toothpick or a cell phone or a drone, these things have hidden psychic effects. So, this was one of McLuhan's main probes. And I asked you, why do humans ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though artists are broadcasting them to us?
Well, I think we're naturally well, I can use moral language. I think we're naturally lazy,
Yeah.
and we have a tendency to if we didn't ta we have to take a lot for granted to be able to focus on the things we care about most. And, um, so, um, I think that the things that we care about most displace our openness to uh, think about the things that we want or need to take for granted in order to love the things that we do love. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, that's so, and so most people don't know how automobiles work,
Oh, exactly.
especially these days.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't I suppose the kids now learn electronics in order to be able to fix their cars, but, yeah, I think that's
It's
why
the same. Yeah,
we
it's the
don't.
same thing. The other channel I podcast on, Concerned Medicine, that's Clinton Ignatoff's main thing. He says people don't know what their cell phone is. They don't know they can pop the back open and fix it. They're just like, oh, this is a miracle. It's like, yeah, that's really good what you said. Now, do you think artists have moral obligation?
I think everybody has moral
Yeah.
obligation. I don't think they have any more or less than anybody else.
Yep. I get that answer a lot. That's amazing. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
I'm not afraid of any ideas.
That is great. Roger, can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
See, this is a trick for me because I can no longer remember the the things that I was told versus the things that I actually remember. So there's this sort of, you know, this foggy zone. But uh, the one of the things that I definitely physically uh, remember was when a dog ran up the hill, and I was on the other side of a little, teeny little hillock, uh, you know, playing in the dirt, and, the dog leapt and knocked me over and stood over me.
Wow.
I remember that vividly. Um, and then I also remember climbing. I remember, and I know, I remember coming home when I was about 4 years old, and after playing outside a a a little boy taught me this rhymes, something like, "What do you do here, and what do you do there, and what do you do with Marilyn Monroe in the bathtub?" And, something about, uh, 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 rubbing her balls and something like that, and I said this to my father. I can't remember. It was like a ridiculous, infantile, uh, ditty that he, came up with, and my father looked at me and he said, "Marilyn Monroe does not have balls." He says, "You're gonna have balls, but Marilyn Monroe did not have balls." I remember that vividly as well.
Wow. Is that was well, both of those I really visualized them well. Thanks for describing them. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Is what?
Is memory
Memory.
more a curse or more a blessing?
Oh, it's a blessing,
Yeah.
especially now that I'm losing it.
Yeah. Hello.
But
Tell
it's
me
but
or
it
go
but there's it's very good in another way is that people can tell me jokes that I've heard many times before, and I still laugh because I forgot the joke.
Yeah, I
Just like
love that.
I forgot the rhyme that this little boy told me.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna Google as soon as we're done. But it is funny because uh we want to believe memory is a blessing. And I love when people say that. But you'd be surprised how many people say no, it's a curse, or they'll go deeper into it. Tell me somebody within your immediate family and then outside your immediate family who had an impact on you, was like a role model, and what specifically was that impact?
Well, inside my family, I would say Deborah, because not only does she have s incredible memory, but she makes life into a story. And she I we've been together 42 years, I think,
Yeah.
and I still love it when she comes home and tells me what happened because it's always a story, and she gave me stories, and she gave me a storied life because I'm not good at putting together a story, and 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 it's not that she's a role model for me, but she's just
Well, no, you answered it. It's the impact. It's
it's
the
had, it's had a huge impact
Yeah,
on me. And
because see, I say impact and role model. So you got it. What Just let me ask you, what's her profession or career?
well, she's done many different things. She was a secondary teacher for many years, and then she worked in sort of management of art restoration, and she's she, she worked as uh, a teacher at the university where I was working in Abu Dhabi for a while, and she had a design company. She did interior design. So, but if you asked her the thing that, she was the most important, meaningful form of work that she's ever done, it's being a mother.
Wow, that is great. I wanna
And
interview I wanna interview her.
it's stupendous. And then on the outside, I would say, uh, it is my mentor, Bob Alford, who's passed away, and he was my professor. He was also a exquisite musician, a pianist. Uh, and uh, we never had office hours. We always walked, and I was a PhD student at the University of Wisconsin, and we used to walk. I don't know how many hundreds of miles we walked along the lake, just talking. And he was much taller than I am, and so I had to walk faster to keep up with him. I mean, it's not that I'm that short. I'm not now. I'm about 5'10". I used to be 6. Um, uh, and so he he's the one who taught me about curiosity and um, about well, he and my writing teacher. I had it for a while. I was in a writing group with a woman named Kate Braverman, as a novelist, and the thing that she taught me, which he also taught me, was about the comma, and he said the same thing to me. He said, you put a, you put a never put a period at the end of your thoughts or the end of your sentence. Put a comma and see what comes next. And oftentimes what comes next will change or displace what came before the comma.
Wow, that is super wise. Yeah, Kate's famous. She's like got books on how to write, and I've
Yeah.
heard her on the radio talking. But it's interesting they both because Bob's last name is spelled what?
Alford, Alford. And he is a theorist. We wrote a book together called Powers of Theory.
Powers of Theory. So, but I mean, if you say his profession was he was a professor of what?
Sociology.
Sociology. Okay,
He
gotcha.
also used to he also used to tell me, he said, because they used to call in graduate school, they used to call me paragraph breath. And they said, it would take a paragraph to sign your name because and it would come up with these involuted, abstruse formulations because I love abstraction and I work well with abstraction. And pe- people wouldn't know what the hell I was talking about. And he would tell me, he'd say, okay, he says, Roger, he said, say it like you're talking to your mother. you
Yeah.
know? And it's just, or somebody like that. And actually, my mother's not a good example because she was so goddamn smart that that's not really a good example. But anyway,
I know
uh,
what you're saying. Like say it to the lay person.
exactly.
Or
And
I learned from you might know her radical therapist, Bond Wright. She says, "Okay, wrap up." Like these people go, "Ah, ah, ah." Okay, that was really good. Now, did your parents raise you a particular religion?
no, my mother hated religion, and uh, my, I mean, they were both Jews, but they neither of them were observant. And my father didn't like religion too much either, actually. So, no, and I never, um, I mean, I've seen religion associated with such horror and as well as such goodness
Yeah.
that I didn't think that religion was a discriminating factor in terms of enabling one to think or to do the good. And therefore, I didn't uh, ever gravitate that much to religion. However, uh, a- as I have gotten older and I have increasingly looked to religion as the metaphorical base to think anew about the world.
Oh, that is so beautiful. Do you pray?
The only time I pray is for the safety and health of those people I love. And then afterwards, I feel guilty because I feel it's such a, a weak uh, and instrumental. It's like being Donald Trump with God, you know?
If God Roger, if God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
I meant that in a sense it's transactional, you know?
I got we're gonna get into all that more definitely. But if God does exist, let's
Mhm.
just say he does, or that God does exist, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Okay, so first of all, I do not one thing I know I do not believe. I do not believe in an anthropomorphic God.
Right, right.
I I think it's just like I when Star Wars first came out, I was so disappointed because I said, you know, all of that cinematic technicity, this brilliant stuff, and some really, really great music and costume design, etc. But to make a cowboy movie in outer space was just, for me, a real disappointment. And so for us to think that God is going to be like a human being seems to me like extraordinary arrogance vis-a-vis the intelligence of the universe.
It's that's beautiful. Again, it really evokes this joke. Guy falls off a mountain and he's hanging onto a cliff and he yells, "Is help, help, is there anyone who can help me?" The clouds part and God's voice goes, "I'm God, I can help you. Let go and I'll save you." Guy goes, "Is there anyone else who can help me?"
So it's yeah, it's like, you know, I do believe, I tell you, I do believe that there are principles of order and ordering
Yeah,
in the universe that are so extraordinary that we have to stand in awe and gratitude that they afford us being.
beautiful. Well put. Do evil people exist or does evil use people as a vehicle?
Well, if I don't believe that God is an anthropomorphic being, I don't believe that evil is uh, s- as an instrumental being either.
Yeah.
Um, and I believe that um, so the only way that you can talk about evil in that way is from a human-centric viewpoint. And so, um, you know, it's very, I mean, I used to think that um, that the solution was to move away from an anthropocentric viewpoint, that we had to give agency and spirit and soul and anything that is part of our being to other beings, including things which are, you know, sub-mammalian. Um, uh, and ultimately comes down to the wind, etc. But then, the more I thought about it, the more I realized that, you know, uh, if we have to save the human race, the human species, we're also going to have to we're going to have to decide, who are enemies and who are our friends. I mean, vis-a-vis Omicron virus, you've got to kill it.
Yeah. Boy, you have ESP, or you must, because you anticipated the next question. How do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? I'm going to set up with a few modern thinkers' thoughts. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK says, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. It's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
Well, you only empower enemies who want to do you harm. You empower sadistic enemies by that. The enemies who don't give a damn about you and yet can do harm to you, but don't intend to do, you're not empowering them or disempowering them by thinking about them. Um, you know, it's situational. You want to know your enemies in order to avoid them.
Yeah.
But you're not empowering them. So it all depends. Empowering your enemies only applies to sadistic people who have intent to harm you and take pleasure in it. So, I mean, I think I'm more with JFK. Know your enemies and don't forget their names.
Pretty smart guy. But, American Indians, indigenous say, and your enemy's your best teacher. What do you think of
Well,
that?
I think that's true. I think we only know who we are in opposition to who we're not.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, and Ram Dass said, I'm having a real hard time loving George Bush. It's like fill in the blank. I'm having a real hard time loving Trump, loving Putin, loving whoever. Like, what can you do? Is hate, I mean, this is just, I usually don't ask this, but I like to. Is hate more innate or more invented? Is the act of hating?
Well, what's the difference between hating and being angry at, or being hostile towards, or feeling aggression towards?
Yeah,
I mean, is hate I mean, hate. I think hate is dangerous because hate is blinding, and hate doesn't acknowledge the potentiality to be different or to change on the part of other beings. I really, I mean, there's so many enemies who, you know, later in life are not enemies,
exactly.
and they can even be friends. And I mean, I think I mean, I think there's so much wisdom in this statement about, the it, it's the issue is not hating and loving, it's indifference,
Yeah,
not seeing, not feeling, not
yeah,
knowing, and so, but you can get to know people, or yeah, you can get to know certain kinds of people, and once you get to know them, you can hate them. and be frightened of them, but be for good reason because you didn't know them beforehand.
Yeah. Okay, fill in the blank, Roger. Anger can be a productive emotion when.
Well, anger can, when you I see this is a really interesting question for me because uh, one of the things that I've made my living off of and is looking for the weakness in ideas. And but I do that with, I mean, there must be some anger in there, but I never feel angry, you know? Uh, it's it's more a game. I mean, I love the intellectual game of saying, "Okay, well, if you take that element out, the thing falls apart." Or you didn't think about that, and therefore it doesn't work, you know? So but it's not anger that motivates me, but I'm looking for the strong structure, the one that can withstand critique
Yeah.
and deconstruction. I like the things that still stand. I love the chair that's still working after 75 years in the family, you know? I like the person who has withstood so many. I have great respect for people who withstand and are still human after suffering a lot. I'm amazed at people that have had very, very difficult lives and are filled with joy in their eyes, you
Yeah.
know, who can smile, you know, their smile, yeah.
Touching, very touching, really touched me deeply. And, yeah, I think what I see is you're a pattern recognizer. You recognize patterns, then you get comprehensive awareness. You get the big picture.
But let me go back to anger. I mean, I
Yeah.
think I am this way because I was, as a little child, I was afraid of the anger of my parents towards each other because they fought a lot, and
Gotcha.
I
Yeah.
hated their anger, and so I shy away from anger.
Yeah.
Anyway, I interrupted you, sorry.
No, no, that's I interrupted you, but that's really heavy because that's always what I'm after is the roots of how people got to where they are. So you added that because I asked George Clinton, can anger be a productive emotion? He says all emotions can be productive and not productive. So you going through that, observing your parents could have caused you to be more a positive person and not look for, you know, negative. But then again, maybe it was you just sussing it out. It's
Wow.
causality. We don't know. It's just like if the parent's an alcoholic, does the child not become an alcoholic because they saw what the parent went through, or they do because maybe it's in the DNA, or again, that's the environment, nurture and nature.
Well, this is so one of the things I do research on is I work on the love God and sexuality,
Yeah.
uh, both in American young adults and in in Muslim majority countries. There's 7 Muslim majority countries through survey work and there. Anyway, so one of the things that was really striking was that I did a lot of interviews uh, with young people, uh, typically in their 20s, and and so I was fascinated by the rise of the hookup culture, and uh, and I got into it because I children, and I was concerned about what was I didn't understand what was going on. And quite a few uh, women in particular told me that they didn't uh, gravitate towards the hookup culture and felt uncomfortable with it because they came from divorced families and they had experienced the power of sexuality and how it had destroyed their families. And they knew it was not, for them, it was freighted with potential harm, which is also not good. I'm not saying this is a good thing.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I'm fascinated by these things. I mean, I just heard an interview by Ezra Klein of Tim Snyder.
Yeah.
Tim Snyder. And no, it wasn't Tim Snyder. It was Steele, the guy who did the Steele dossier. And it might not have been Ezra Klein. I'm confusing it with Klein's interview with Snyder. It was somebody who did Steele. And Steele gave an interview, the Steele dossier.
Okay.
And he said he'd had interaction with Putin and had followed him. He was the head of the Russian desk for M16. And he said the thing that's distinctive about Putin was that he has no empathy. And he traces that to his growing up in Leningrad, which is now St. Petersburg, I think. And he, as a child, had lived through the siege. Well, people starved during the siege, and they ate dogs and cats and rats, and they even ate each other. So he lived through this period of complete barbarism. And so, how do you adapt? You adapt by not being empathetic because you can't afford to be empathetic, to survive. And so
Yeah.
what is he doing? He's doing sieges on these Ukrainian cities. And, they just took Mariupol this morning and putting them under
Yeah.
siege, putting them through what he went through as a child. So,
Yeah.
I think a lot of these things are very much conditioned by the trajectories that we live through, and which is why I admire people who have gone through incredible traumas and have managed to somehow hold on to or reconstruct their basic humanity. It's so courageous and so beautiful.
Again, that really inspires me, Roger, and I appreciate that. We're going to get to what you brought up there at the end, but let's just sort of follow through here. What first attracted you to pursue, being a professor of religious studies is sort of how you're listed, but being a professor. So just sort of briefly walk us through. You went to college to be a writer and then you went towards sociology, or what did you study and why did you get attracted to studying that? What was the sort of, it's more like, what was the tipping point? You're going along in your life and you're trying to decide what you're going to do. What did you hear or see or read that made you go, that's what I want to pursue?
Well, I'll very quickly go through the sequence. So I
Yeah.
thought I liked argument. I liked logical argument. I thought I wanted to be a lawyer.
Okay.
And I was an undergraduate student and I sat next to a law student and he had this giant book next to him, big green book, bigger than the telephone book from where I grew up. So I said, "What's that?" It's my law book, and he explained to me he had to memorize quite a bit of this. And I said, that moment, I decided I don't want to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to be a journalist, and I was a student journalist. I worked on the paper, and my favorite genre was the editorial feature. And then I realized I couldn't stay with a story, and I didn't control what story I wrote about. And so, and then I fell in love with psychoanalysis, and I wanted to be a therapist because I loved reading psychoanalytic theory. But then I realized I couldn't stand to listen to people for the rest of my life.
That's good.
And so then I wanted to be a political scientist, but the political science classes, the obligatory political science classes were at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I didn't like getting up at 8 o'clock in the morning because I used to study from about 11 until 4 o'clock in the morning. And so the sociology classes started at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, so I could take them. And I realized that sociology was the biggest umbrella that you could find on the earth. You could study anything, and I could live and work anywhere in the world that I wanted to. And so I said, I'll do this. And so I was going to drop out of that and do something else. And then there was just something that took over me, and I just wanted to be good at something. And I just happened to be in sociology, so I just determined that I would become a sociologist.
Wow, that was a good run through. It was very exciting too. I bet you we're pretty much close age wise because I was in Ann Arbor going to college from 71 to 80. So
I'm older.
You were in Madison. When were you in Madison?
I was undergraduate from 65 to 69. I was born in 1947.
47, yeah.
So I'm going to be
60,
75 this year.
yeah, you're in Madison. Yeah.
So
I
I was
see.
in Madison from 1970 or 69 until 76. And
Right.
and as you might be able to tell, I kept changing what I wanted to work on. So it took me a while to get out of there.
Yeah. No, that's good. Now, these two questions are about the creative process. But let's just say, you know, you still employ some creative process in what you pursue and how you pursue it. So the first question is James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin over 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, "This is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree?" Years later, Faulkner says, "Sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism." Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Well, I think there are many people who do uh, just live life. And, um, but I think that it is enormously difficult to be outside of ourselves. And I think it's essential to our being selves to have mirrors. And I mean, I'm just sort of glossing Freudian theory in a way, but I mean, I think evolutionary theory works the same way. You have to be seen in order to be. Um, so I think that I think these are stylized mirrors that enable us to see various aspects of ourselves and to think about them. It allows us to be reflective. It allows us to laugh at ourselves. It allows us to cry for ourselves. It allows us to enter other worlds that we don't ever have a chance of being in. And if you think about it, I mean, one of the things that's interesting about being a sociologist is that, I love talking to people, uh, anybody. Um,
Yeah.
and because people's lives are so intricate and the mechanisms are so complicated and so fascinating that it's all it's all mysterious and adventurous to do that. You go around the corner and you can find things that are amazing, but we don't do it. And so, yeah, I think it's just it's a giant adventure. But
Really well put.
it's an alternative to taking the risks of dealing with real people
Yeah,
in real situations because you have no idea where they're going to go. And that's
yeah,
why it's brave to help somebody because, if you open yourselves up, goodness knows where it's going to go.
yeah. It really evokes a lot of the paradox, which I'm always studying, is like some people say, movies create false expectations. It's like, well, maybe we need false expectations. In what you're saying is in really well stylized mirrors. Instead of calling them false expectations, call them stylized mirrors to reflect, to cause reflection. Then Auden, the poet, says the mystery of art is that we don't know if it activates or pacifies us. If you're an artist, you want to think it activates you, that music's healing, and in art and literature and poetry is all good, but we don't know if it's activating or pacifying us. But the next question is, a screenwriting teacher told me great art, in art meaning you writing a book or poetry or painting or music, great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process? Being a professor, writing books.
Well, I mean, this has many layers. So, first of all, being expressive and being analytic or conceptual are the two dimensions or aspects that is my goal in life to bring together. So I don't like choosing between those two.
Yeah.
Although it's very, very difficult. And if you get academic education like I do and hang around with the people I do, the poetry goes out of people's language, including my own language. So, so that's one aspect. Second is this question of intention and non-intention. So I think the goal is not to be on either side, because if you don't have things that are going on that you're not aware and don't intend to be going on, then your writing or your expression is flat. And you can, so, they have, all of these programs now that are reading books. And when you get a reader, which is automated, it's a computerized voice that's, I've noticed it in terms of uh, text recognition converted to voice.
Yeah.
You can, it's horrible. It's flat. It's flat. It's like it's what a lot of people who have a certain kind of ear can hear in digital recordings.
Yeah.
There's something missing in the digital version of the sound. And so I think not knowing what you're doing is absolutely essential to quite a bit of what you do.
Yeah. Do that's good, because McLuhan called to it what you described. I think it's similar, suspended judgment. He said understanding is not having a point of view.
Yes,
You know, yeah,
which is why, I mean, one of the things I've discovered about myself is I'm a pretty good interviewer.
yeah,
And one of the reasons I think that is because I think people feel that they're not going to be judged
Yeah,
when I talk to them. It's not
good.
that I'm not judgmental. I'm terribly judgmental, but
Yeah,
I don't like hurting people, you know?
yeah. No, that's a high awareness level. In fact, when you brought up those words, hookup culture, I figured it was like what Tinder is. That's how what I know is
Yeah.
Tinder. And
Yeah.
that's like McLuhan would go, he wouldn't go, I love Tinder or hate Tinder. In his lonely teenage room, he might take a point of view, but with one or other person, he knows Tinder has services and disservices. Let's suss out the big picture, you know. So, we came from an era, we would meet someone at the grocery store and fall in love. Now you like you put a profile up and you go to a bar and meet him and have sex. It's like, what? That's like, it's hard for us to understand that, but it can work.
Well, yes, of course it can work, but there's something that has been changed, and it's hard for me not to say lost
Yeah.
by the difficulty that, we go back to how we began with the eyes and the nipples.
Yeah.
So not to be able to talk to somebody, to let alone to look them in the eyes, to see
Yeah.
them, to be seen, is I think it's crippling.
Yeah.
And I think that I think there's something. I think there's such a level of fear of the public sphere in our world, and social interaction has become increasingly fraught,
Yeah.
and so people don't know how to behave. I mean, it's terrible.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Yep. What's more important, conviction or compromise?
I don't know. It depends on the situation.
Yeah.
I mean, the ability of the Ukrainians to have the conviction that they do and the courage that they do is awe-inspiring to everybody in the world right now. And on the other hand, Zelensky's come out and said he's made various moves where, you know, to save the lives of Ukrainians, thousands and thousands of Ukrainians that may very well die in the next offensive. Um, he'd be willing to sacrifice a lot, which is probably unthinkable to a lot of people in his country.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it all depends upon the situation. And I think, when is it what's worth dying for and what's worth killing for are the biggest questions that we will face in our lives.
Yeah. A poet said that poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
What language is my inner dialogue in? Probably tastes and smiles.
Oh, I've never had either of those. That's beautiful. Is perception reality?
Is perception. Well, perception has real effects. It doesn't mean that it corresponds to reality.
Yeah. Lewis Carroll said, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
I've wanted to believe in impossible things, but I don't think I have believed them. I've wanted to believe that uh, I've wanted to believe. I mean, I've wanted to believe that people don't inherently get pleasure out of inflicting pain.
Yeah.
I've desperately wanted to believe that, but I'm afraid that I don't believe it anymore.
Wow.
I believe that we have that, and that our struggle is to control it, to convert it, to I used to think that the concept of civilization or humanity was uh, ideology. Now I've come to become more conservative, and I believe these are huge human achievements, and that, um, yeah, I mean, just the fact that we live in a nation uh, that where slavery was considered natural,
Yeah.
and that we've had a black president, and now we have a female black member of the Supreme Court, uh, indicates that we can be civilized, more civilized. But that is an achievement that's required millions and millions of people to die to get there.
Yeah.
I mean, history is the cruelty of history is something that has depressed and astounded me.
Yeah. Well, Roger, you're really good with words. I like the words you've chosen to communicate to me today, and it's taught me a lot. Tell
Thank
me
you.
one major element of your pursuits in sociology since you've started. One major element that stayed the same and one major element that's changed.
Well, this may sound paradoxical, but the element that's changed is that the God category, the category of God, and what it means, and what it tells us about ourselves, has become very important. As somebody who used to think that it was, it was an escape hatch from the limits of being human.
Right.
So that's a big change. And taking love seriously. I mean, it's like, it's like a five and dime, greeting card section. Love and God have entered my thought, have become dominant figures in my thought. That's what's changed. What's remained the same is two things have remained the same. One is the possible unifications of different domains of thought through metaphor, and two is uh, the and this is probably one that connects the first and it's the what's changed and what's remained the same is the um, looking for the mystery in life and social life in particular. And so I was taught by my mentor that, and he got it from someplace else, but that there were two basic stances in social analysis. Either to take something normal that you take for granted and make it absolutely amazing, that it's like, how could that possibly be? And the other one is to take something which is extraordinary and make it an ordinary.
Yes.
And so that's been I've gone back and forth along that seesaw my whole life.
Really well put. Thank you. Very articulate. Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you've in, turned into a strength.
Well, I would say humor, because I would always make jokes out of things, including things that people took very seriously. So, and uh, including playing with the inappropriate.
Yeah.
And so that's a weakness in terms of being sensitive to other people.
Yeah.
Uh, and but I made it into a strength because I made so what so what what's the instinct behind humor? The instinct behind humor is just to stand just a couple of degrees in rotation and sees things slightly askew so that they are recognizable but funny, right? And
Yeah.
so it's uh, and so I use that same stance in order to try to find things that you don't ordinarily see.
It's beautiful. George Carlin said comedians draw a line and then they cross it.
But
And
I have to say one caveat there that drives my wife crazy is that I don't find most comedic productions funny.
God,
I don't laugh at most things. Most comedies I don't find funny. Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, that's interesting because another friend says when you're laughing, you're learning. And
Yeah,
it really, yeah, and it really resonates, or it sort of resonates with Gurdjieff, the Sufi, said, laughter is the reconciliation of yes and no.
oh, that's beautiful. I
And
studied Gurdjieff for many years.
did you
Uh,
really?
yeah, because Gurdjieff was very influential in the world around Frank Lloyd Wright. His last wife was a Gurdjieff,
That's right.
and she wanted to turn. I wrote a book with Harold Zellman, the architect, and about Frank Lloyd Wright's Taliesin Fellowship, uh, and uh, and so I mean, and so I was yeah, I think that's really, I don't remember him saying that or reading that, him saying that, but I really like that. It
Yeah.
is laughter. And I think, I mean, I tell my daughters that the most important criteria for judging whether you might want to marry somebody or spend your life with them is whether you laugh together. That in
Okay.
the end, laughing is more important than an orgasm.
That's that's push it really far. Frank Zappa said you can't come and laugh at the exact same moment. But it is like that is really good. Laughter is even more important than orgasm. But you already touched on this, but I got to bring it up because you almost said it. You create what you resist. They go, what you resist persists. Bob Goldthwait, the comedian, morphed it into you are what you hate. And James Joyce said, it's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve. Louis Buñuel said, thank God I'm an atheist. So this whole thing, I mean, you already touched on it, but just briefly, one creates what one resists. Any comment?
Well, the way I experience that practically is that when the most it is the resistance, it's the things that make you uncomfortable, the things that you can't solve, the things that force you to go a different direction are the places that you want to return to, because that's where the gold is located. That is where that's where something is hiding that can serve you or that can teach you or that can surprise you. And rather than be afraid of it or be exhausted by it, you have to have enough will and strength to keep coming back to it and see what it can teach you. So I think what resists you are the doors to knowledge.
Yeah. I asked George Clinton, what kind of music do you like? He goes, the kind of music I hate so I can figure out why I hate it. So
I not like that. No.
yeah, but he's drawn to something like I think this things you can't solve, you want to return to them because they're like the nut meat. So there's a bit of Roger, we only got 3 more minutes in our 90. Can you go a little over or you got to end in 3?
No, I can go a little over.
Okay, let's go a little over there.
I have a couple of questions for you too.
Sure. You want to ask him now or at the end?
Go ahead. I'll use our overage time to ask them.
Okay. How do you find peace of mind?
How do I find peace of mind? Well, I walk. My father said walking is much better than psychotherapy and it's cheaper too.
That is smart. Smart dad. Can you forget to die?
And you forget? I don't even know what the hell that means.
That's exactly what this great filmmaker, I saw his new film and he said that exact same answer. So that's good.
What was the film? Who was the filmmaker?
It's Charlie. I'll send you the trailer, but it's an amazing film. All he did was edit probably 200 to 500 clips of people in old black and white films. It's an experimental film, but it's a feature film. But anyways, it really explores death because the thing is that every person in this film is dead. And then at the end, they roll the credits. So it's all the people you've seen your whole life in movies. But the way he edits it, it doesn't matter really who they are or what. You recall them by the face. But it really explores death. It's like the first review of film in Paris through 130 years ago was, now we'll never die. So, it's really exploring that phenomenon as what the film experience, same as a photograph, what it's done to human beings. It's sort of like that hidden psychic effect. So anyways, it's a long whole thing about, can you forget to die too? I can send you some thoughts on that. But here's 5 Alan Watts questions, really brief, off the top of your head in a couple words, if you could. Keep it brief. Who started it all?
Eve.
Are we going to make it?
I'm afraid not.
Where do we put it?
I think we have to put it. I think we have to put it on our tongue.
Oh my God, who's cleaning it up?
I'm afraid nobody can clean it all up.
Wow. And is it serious?
It's fucking serious.
You are good. For someone who talks in, what was the line? Paragraph something?
Paragraph breath. They call me paragraph.
Paragraph breath. You get it. You don't know how many people, Roger, I ask, okay, keep this one brief to 3 to 5 words. They'll go on for 20, 50 words. And I said, I can't stop them, but you really did that amazingly well. I've never had Eve. I've never had put it on your tongues. That's really good. Okay, so
you know why I say put it on your tongue?
Please go ahead.
Put the tongue. You asked about language.
Yeah.
So the tongue is one of our tongue and the nose and the eye, our basic senses. But tongue taste, I think, is one of the ways in which we know that we trust and it comes to us without language.
You mean the tongue, whether you're encountering a human or a weather storm or whatever, it comes to us through our tongue?
Well, I meant it partly metaphorically, but I meant it, literally, like what something tastes like is our truth.
Yeah.
It's true to us. And
Truth.
the most important thing that we can have is our truth, the truth of our being.
Yeah.
And so language can trick us. Language can distort us.
Yeah.
But the tongue, no. I think the eye can trick us too. I just don't think we get tricked by our tongue.
Yeah. Yeah, that was this woman I interviewed. She goes, "You're trying to trick me." I goes, all language, everything I say is a trick. But there's 2 things there. People go, I have a gut feeling, intuition, gut, taste. They don't realize that's exactly what you said. I would love to explore that more. Is there someone you've studied who taught you that whole thing about tongue and taste, or is that on your own you got that? In metaphor, tongue, taste, metaphor.
The discovery of the primacy of metaphor was something I got on my first acid trip. Okay.
Wow.
Where I just said, well, my goal in life is to achieve metaphor consciousness.
Then did you eventually gravitate towards Lakoff's metaphor book?
I've never read. I have the book here. I haven't opened it yet.
Wow. Have you ever studied the symbolists, the poets?
No.
You ever study Edgar Allan Poe?
I've read Edgar Allan Poe. I like Edgar Allan Poe a lot.
Anyways, we should do another. I think it was Jay Paulson who introduced us, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love talking to him.
We should do a whole podcast in the future on metaphor because we could really get into a lot. You know a lot there. But just to conclude, a few more. If you were walking down the street today, Roger, and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Don't be so frightened of what other people think, including think about you. And um, learn more languages and read more fiction. Read fiction all your life.
That's pretty good. If a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
Oh. I don't know. Sizzle and pop.
That's good. They want to scent the glue in the binding. What smell?
Fresh corn on the cob.
Oh my God, that's good. Tell me something good you never had and you never want.
Something good I never had and
And you never want it. Yeah, it's good. You never had it, but you never want it.
well, it depends what you mean by good.
It's
There's
just in general, just whatever off the top of
I
your
mean,
head.
the first thing that came to mind was heroin.
That's fine. Look at, you know what? The three answers I get the most are fame, money, and heroin.
Really, yeah.
So that's you. You see, the one thing I like about this is the universality, how sometimes people will answer, 90% of people will answer a certain way. And something as random as that, yeah. Okay, just a couple more. If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
Vomit.
Thornton Wilder said in 1928, art is confession. Art is the secret told, but art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. Roger, you laid your cards on the table for over 90 minutes. I'm not insinuating you haven't answered this, but what's it really all about for you?
Connection.
Yeah. I love people who can answer in one word. That is a great word. What's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
I'm inspired by women around the world who are claiming all their humanity.
Beautiful. What gives you the most optimism?
My answer would be the same: women.
Nice. I've got to split those up. So many people are now taking the last two. You know, the answer I get the most is youth, but I love women. That is a perfect answer. I don't get that. But I
Because
wanted,
but look at I mean, just
oh,
look at I mean, it's just like it's just it's time immemorial. They change women changing the human race. I mean, it's just it's incredible.
dude, that's really great because I left one out. Now I have to ask it. That was my last question, but I have to ask it is what caused matriarchy?
That's your last question. What caused matriarchy?
Yeah. Well, my last question, I'm gonna tell you my last question is usually what gives you the most optimism. But because you said that and I left it out, I have to ask it because it's really hot on all my agenda and all my discussions recently is what caused matriarchy. I'm just curious your answer.
Well, I mean, intrauterine birth on the one side and testosterone on the other.
Yeah, yeah. Well, um, that no, it helped me a lot. That's good. Now, I just want to tell you this word connection you gave me. What's it really all about, connection? Because the first question is, what's the best thing for a human being? And I asked that because my friend studied Wilhelm Reich and he said the best thing for a human being is another human being.
Yeah.
And then the last question is what gives you the most optimism? This is the question they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life. And he said, other people. So, he spends his life cutting down people, but he needs them, you know. So it's the full circle thing, that's it. Okay, I'm ready for your questions now, Roger. Thank you so much. Bravo. That was like A plus, dude. You really got it.
Thank you. Well, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure answering your questions. Because it's just like about art. These questions get you to. I mean, I'm a very suspicious person, and so I was dubious, as
Yeah.
to what this was going to be like. But I trust Jay, so I didn't think that he was going to lead me into some sort of crevice that I couldn't get out of. But the and that's probably my greatest fear is to be buried alive. But the one of the things I'm curious about is how you got to this modality, and what does this modality say about you? Because we do similar kind of work in
Yeah.
the sense. We want to know how people
Yeah.
work. Okay. But why do you do this? Why do you take satisfaction out of doing this?
Yeah. I've psychoanalyzed myself on why I do it, and I'll send you a PDF of my book, and the introduction to the book sort of tries to lay it out. But
Okay.
it's good because I grew up watching Merv Griffin, Mike Douglas with my mom, watching these. We grew up with some amazing interviewers. Dick Cavett.
Oh
Look at
yeah.
Larry King. I didn't watch him much, but he's amazing. He never prepped. I mean, I watched you for 5 minutes on a lecture on YouTube. I read your little blurb. And Jay told me you're interesting. I don't really want to know too much about the person, but it's good to know a little, their profession. So people always go, why do you want to interview me? And I go, learning. That's what I usually say, learning. And they're like, well, this big NPR guy goes, I don't want to be interviewed by you. Whatever. To me, it doesn't matter if the person is famous, got a book or anything. It's just they're willing to talk for 90 minutes. And, this poet that Jay likes, in fact, I interviewed him and people say, you should interview this guy. And I interviewed him. And after every question, he goes, I don't know. What do you think? Which, and eventually we talk things out. But there's people who they're on guard and they think I'm out to trap them. Like that one woman, she says, "You're trying to trick me." I goes, "But yeah, I'm trying to trick you. But I mean, that's what language is. I'm not trying to get over on the person. I'm not trying to make them see. Some people criticize my style because they go, "There's too much you in it, Jerry. Don't drop all the quotes and all that." I'm not trying to impress people with my, they go, "You're amazing and remember all these quotes." It's like, it's not that. It's just they're jumping off points. So I just find them to be jumping off points. And then somebody like, if I said Gurdjieff said that, you go, "Oh, I studied Gurdjieff." Then it gives us a connection. But Roger, to get deeper, which is really the motive, is to get people to jump out of their stock lines instead of relying on what they already know. It's like, how do you unlearn or get deeper? And I studied psychology and sociology a little, so it's sort of that motive, but it is a power thing in the long run. I know it because I'm running. Like my one friend said, "Can't we just talk?" Instead of me rattling off. Really amazing woman. I highly suggest you check her out sometime, is Carolyn Casey. She's sort of new agey astrology, but she's from semiotics and she's really wonderful with words.
Hmm.
And I said, Caroline, I shouldn't have said this, but I said, I don't really want you to say all your lines that you always say, because I've listened to them for 20 years and I use them and they're great. She goes, "Then drop your script." That was the healthiest thing, one of the healthiest things anyone ever said. Because
Wow.
even if I didn't have my script in front of me, and I have it so memorized, and it's like a mantra to me, it would be hard for me to shift. I can go out on a party or on the boardwalk and meet some in Venice and meet someone new and talk to them for an hour and do this sort of thing and integrate it naturally. But of course, it's, I'm asking you to be interviewed. So like, Cheryl King, this amazing theater woman, the other day, she says, "I was nervous." She's like, she's a pro. She like teaches people how to do one person shows in New York and, theater, performance art and everything. It was like, she still admitted that she was like a little nervous. So I do find that people like, why is this person doing this? So that sorry to go on and on, but it's important because people don't give me this kind of feedback like, why do you do it? And somebody like you, it's more, sociology and interviewing, is that in the long run, it's just connection and conversation. But there is this edge. I know that I have the questions and I'm asking you,
Well, it would be, it would be very interesting to experiment with making this bipolar or reciprocal,
yeah.
whether that's even possible.
Well, it
But
is. It is because we do it. We do salons. We do salons with Jay. Like Jay thought his interview wasn't. He did. I didn't do very good. It's like my one friend said that was one of his favorite ones. I mean, I've done like 500 or 3 to 500 over 40 years.
wow,
It's not that they're good or they're bad. It's just some people are more cooperative and the people who fight the questions are the most important ones for me, because then I got to learn how to do like jujitsu or judo, like
yeah,
go to plan B. But since Zoom started, since COVID started 2 years ago, it's totally changed because I have no tech things I have to really worry about. 80 to 90% of all these work so easy. You just hit a button and it's done, and that's it. I don't have to worry about anything else. I didn't like, in the past, I would do them in a coffee house in front of an audience. or do it one-on-one in a room. In the tech stuff, I didn't like to worry about, but I had to. And then I had to wait until I was in their town or they were in my town. And now it's just so easy. So then I shifted to salons, which I've done for 30 years also, but I never recorded those. So we meet in a room with 10, 20 people. That's where Jay started attending. And we sort of do this as a group. And I would say, hey, the New York Times has an article and they bring up this tool, flag. A woman went up a flagpole and ripped down the Confederate flag. Okay, let's discuss why humans invented flags. What are flag services and disservices? And that was much more like what you said, bipolar, where everybody's involved, even though it is round robin-ish. It's still more involvement of several partners. So if we did one on metaphor with Jay, that would be great.
So this anticipates my other question,
Yeah.
which is that my experience, a lot of people complain about the rise of remote interaction.
Yeah.
And I love listening to people being interviewed.
Yeah.
And I find the experience of remote conversation. I created 3 different seminars, all 3 of them which are remote, academic seminars, and they are much more intimate than in-person ones, I feel. And I'm curious as to, given that you've had this experience before COVID, are they more sort of fluid and intimate in the remote form than in the face-to-face form?
Roger, completely. And people hate to hear it. I go, I'm not going to have my meetings anymore. Even if they open up the Poetry Center down the street, people got to drive there. They got to walk up the steps, and they're older, and everybody says, I can just do it in my bedroom. People are more intimate and they're more attuned, and people don't want to hear that. In general, the people who participate, no, it is because we're only focused like this.
Yeah.
We're not in a room and we can see the person's full body. We can stare at the sunlight shade, sunlight reflecting in the corner. You got the smell of the whole room. It's amazing. I went to my film festival for 2 years online. It was like, it really spoiled me. And then this year I had to go fly 3,000 miles, do one of these for 90 minutes with a group of 20 people. And it was amazing. It really worked. And the director didn't look at her cell phone for the whole 90 minutes. She was participating. So I have the belief in that. I still ride my bike to the beach every day and talk to people live all through COVID. So it wasn't that I was exclusively living the Hollywood Squares, remote, what you call remote interaction world. It's that I can integrate both. But no, it's way better. People are more attentive. They're more intimate. And it's the way they invented it was that it is your head and your eye contact. So for me, it's verbal exchange. When you said connection, to me, conversation is verbal exchange and eye contact are the 2 main things.
Yeah.
So some of these I did with a guy on landline and I don't see his eyes for 90 minutes and it's just a little bubble. It still works. I've done interviews on phone for years. They still work, but just the eye contact thing, hand gesture, just that little amount is to me amazing.
I wonder if Italians make sure that they sit back so that they can see her. Listen, I'm not stronger than I like metaphysics, but I'm not stronger than physics, and I gotta go to the toilet.
Roger, thank you so much. It's really been a delight, and I appreciated the follow-up a lot. So
I loved it as well. Thank you.
onward and upward. Let's never let it end, even though I'm hitting an end button.
Be well.